Hello, this is the Resonator algorithm on the Disting EX. This is an implementation of the popular Rings module by Émilie Gillet, which is open source, so we can implement it in the Disting now. I'm not going to try and explain all of Rings, though I'm sure there are literally hundreds of videos online about Rings, so I'll just do a quick blast through it and maybe point out some things that are different on the Disting version. So inputs and outputs, you can completely set these up how you like. At the moment I've got an audio input on input 2 and I've got a stereo output on outputs 1 and 2. Output 4 is a mono mix of those two. Output 3 is just the Resonator outputs without the dry signal. So if I just get a sample running through from here, you can hear it resonating. And it's all over on the one output because at the moment the polyphony is set to 1, so it's only using what would be the odd output on the original Rings. We can change the polyphony up to 4, and now it's using the odd and even. I should point out in the UI, every time the thing generates a strum, this little thing fires off there, so you can see that it's doing it. So like the original, depending on whether you plug in things like the strum input or the audio input or the Volt-Pro-Octave pitch input, it will generate its own strums or not, or generate its own excitement. I'm not sure what the original phrasing is. The signal that makes it go ping, anyway, it will generate that if you don't give it an audio input. So we'll do that in a moment. But let's just go back to polyphony 1, so everything's on the left. Now this will just point out one thing that is different on the Disting version is that there's actually a dry signal path here. So if I turn that up,
will serve to organize and measure the best.
You can have the dry signal mixed in, and then for the odd and even inputs, odd and even outputs, I should say, with the Resonator, you can change the pan of those in this stereo mix. So even if there's only one, you could put it in the middle. Or if you don't want, if you've got odd and even, let's go for a polyphony of 2. If you don't want this kind of extreme left-right pan of the two outputs, you could put them a little bit more towards the middle. So you don't get quite such extreme stereo. But I'm going to put that back because some of the models have like reverbs and stuff, which we'll want to be fully stereo. So that's with an audio input. Yes, so what often you might want to do is ping it with CV gate. So we'll take the audio out for now, forget about that, and then we'll change our, where's it gone? We'll turn the audio input off, so it's going to use its internal exciter source, and then we'll go to the Volt-Pro-Octave input and put that on input 2 instead. And we'll take a pitch CV, which I've got coming from an FH2, which is over here, you can't quite see. And we'll put that into input 2. And then we've got some nice pings. Let's go for full polyphony. Not sure what's happening with this screen. Loose connection there. There we go. Let's get a few more notes. There we go. And then you can of course play with all the normal things you'd expect to play with, the structure and brightness controls and the damping. And you can CV all those with the different inputs, which are all up on these parameters over here. So yeah, you can basically do everything with this you could do with the original, I would say. So right now, because we're only giving it a Volt-Pro-Octave pitch input, it's generating its strums internally every time it detects a pitch change. So we could give it a manual strum. Where would that be? Which is here, so let's put that on input 4. So now it's not generating any notes because we're not giving it a strum, but I'll give it the gate input from the FH2. There we go. Which sounds the same, with the difference being that if we now wanted to have repeated notes, say, so like that, just a continual note, or like that. That wouldn't work with it just detecting changes in the pitch if we just wanted to repeated note. So it's worth giving it both. So yeah, I mean, and then we can play with all the different modes. So that's the modal resonator. Sympathetic strings, it's quite nice. Let's just give it a few more notes to chew on. String, FM voice. Sympathetic quantized strings. Another point of difference here that in the original rings, the chord that's quantizing to would be on the structure control. But in this one, I've put it on its own parameter so you can actually get a name for the chord, which makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's going on. And then string reverb and synth. Now this is actually an Easter egg mode on the original, but it's here as a first-class citizen. And then once we're in synth mode, we've got this extra thing which lets you control the effect that's applying to that synth, which is all rather lovely. Yeah, well, let's go back to, it's probably my favourite actually. Yeah, and then everything else is the same. Oh yeah, I should mention that the noise gate on the original rings, there's a noise gate coded on the audio input. You can turn that off in this if you find the disting's inputs to be adequately noise free, which they like you will. And you've got gain controls. If you want to tweak things, dry path I've told you already, pans, all the inputs things, and then MIDI and I2C, similar to the normal inputs. If you just want to give it a pitch from MIDI, you can do that, or if you just want to strum it from MIDI, you can do that. If you want to do pitch and strum from MIDI, you can do that. And the same on I2C. So you can drive this from a teletype or whatever, and it all sounds rather nice. And then I suppose what we should do if we have a rings is we should put it into clouds. We don't have a clouds, but we do have a disting EX granulator. So let's do that. Okay, so I've got my rings going into the disting EX granulator. At the moment that's just a dry signal. Let's turn up the effect. I should just mention this has been more covered in depth in another video, but the disting EX granulator has also been super souped up in this release to include more grains and its own reverb amongst other things. Let's just turn down the dry signal. There we go. Rather lush cloud. Anyway, listen to that all day. So there we go, that's the Resonator, aka Rings, on the disting EX.